All right, let's move over to the amp for oscillator 2 right over here. Go ahead and click here and turn this on. We'll want to make this amp for oscillator 2 the same as the amp for oscillator 1. So you want to make this envelope look exactly the same. Well, it's pretty easy. Just over here, click your mouse right here on this sustain handle and move this all the way up. Okay, we have a little release going on there, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce that a little bit. All right, great. Let's go ahead and move over to the LFO section. Let's go ahead and click here and turn on LFO number 1. The LFO will allow us to oscillate the sound a little bit, creating more of that wobbly sound that's heard in dubstep. But I noticed in drum and bass, the wobble's not so extreme. It's just a very, very light wobble. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. But that's what this section is for. So we're going to start off using LFO number 1. And I want you to change the rate. You can use any rate you want, but it's important to match the rate of LFO number 1 to the rate of LFO number 2. You can turn both of these on right now, and then you can just go over here to the rate knob, and I'll just type in here the one I originally used, which is just a 3.9. We're going by frequency. If you would like to sync the rate to follow the tempo of the project, then you would click on this little musical note button right here, and that'll change it from frequency to a project tempo sync time. So after you have the rate for LFO number 1, click on the rate for LFO number 2, and you can enter the same value. So I'll just type in 3.9 and press enter. Okay, let's see what else here. There's just a couple other little adjustments that we need to do. Right here where it says width inside the LFO section, currently it's set to 50%, and this controls the width of the waveform. For the LFO, enter in 0. And then for LFO number 2, for the width, enter in 0 and press enter. Okay, let's hear how it sounds. Well, it sounds the same. And the reason is because we haven't really told analog where we want to send this LFO to. Well, the first one we're going to do is the amp, because we want to actually oscillate the amperage or the volume of oscillator number 1 and oscillator number 2. This will give it more of that up and down, that kind of a wah, wah, wah type sound. Not necessarily using the frequency cutoff just yet, but just oscillating the volume up and down, following the selected waveform that we have for the LFO. Over here on amp 1, go ahead and click here. And you see where it says level modulation? Well, right under this section, you'll find LFO 1. Well, currently it's set to 0. So the LFO is not affecting anything at the moment until we give this a higher value. So what you can do is just click here. You can click and move the mouse up to increase the value like this, or you can just enter the value that I used, which is just simply 0.47. And let's go ahead and hear the sound now. But it looks like we're overdriving analog at the moment, so what I'm going to do is just go ahead and turn down the main volume control. There we go. But if you listen closely, you can hear that oscillate, and if I add more, it makes it more extreme. And we're going to do the same for amp 2 for oscillator 2. So go ahead and click on amp 2 down here, and you can make this really close or the same value as amp number 1. So right here, level modulation, LFO number 2. Let's go ahead and increase this a little bit. Let's move over to filter number 1, because what we're going to do is oscillate the frequency cutoff knob. And to do this, let's send this filter to LFO 1. So I'll click here and give it a value. I'm going to click and move my mouse up to 95. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to show you guys the secret. The secret is to use unison inside analog. Now this separates it from the normal, typical analog sound to a like total, whoa, like what the heck is that type sound. And it's over here on the master section. I'll go ahead and click here. Then right here it says UNI, which stands for unison. And go ahead and turn this on. The cool thing is that you can actually increase the voices of the notes that you play when using unison. Over here on the unison section, where it says voices, it's currently set to 2 by default, but you can actually change this to 4 to really thicken the sound. So basically, whatever note you play, times that by 4 more voices on top of that note. So it really gives it a nice thick sound. Okay, what this is doing is it's allowing you to layer these voices together, but you can also tinker with the detuning. So you can detune these voices that you've added on to the instrument. And to do that, just click right here and turn this up. And this is totally optional, by the way. You can turn this up all the way, or you can just give it a little bit of a detuning effect. And you can notice a big difference just by that. Listen to this. You can play with some of the drive options inside the filter. For an example, I'll click on filter number 1, and right here where it says drive, and you have these other levels of drive that you can apply to the filter. The one we're going to use for this that I used originally was the isometrical number 1. And down here on filter number 2, you can also set this filter to isometrical number 1 as well. Something else you can do to really give the sound some interesting tonalities is to come over on oscillator number 1, and right here where it says sub and sync, you'll really have a lot of fun playing with this. Right here where it says mode, change the mode from sub to sync, and then turn up the ratio a little bit. So this is before, and this is after. Okay, to make this complete, I'm going to go ahead and insert a chorus effect and also an EQ on the same track. So I'll click and drag in the chorus, and then I'll also drag in an EQ8 just next to that. Now when it comes to the chorus, if you don't adjust it right, it can make the sound totally retarded. So what I'm going to do for the delay number 1, I'm going to turn down the high pass all the way down, and then turn the millisecond slider all the way down to 0. Now for delay number 2, we can leave this on modulation, but I'll go ahead and decrease this down to somewhere close to 4 milliseconds. Now for the amount of the modulation, let's go ahead and make this an even number here, 2.00, press enter. And for the rate of this modulation, I'm going to go ahead and bring this down a little bit, and you can tinker with this to hear some other interesting sounds. The course allows us to thicken and widen the sound a little bit, but you don't want to go too wide, and it can also make the sound a little bit thin in some cases. So make sure to adjust the dry and wet knob here accordingly to get the sound that you want. For the EQ, to make the sound stand out a little bit in the mix, you can add some more higher frequencies to it, just like this. You'll find by tweaking the frequency cutoff and the resonance, this will allow you to achieve those other interesting wobbly sounds that are mostly heard in drum and bass and also dubstep bass. My name's Mark. This is Ableton Daily. Hey, if you like the videos, please subscribe. I post videos all the time on music and sound design. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.